Hi everyone, welcome to this video which is going to show you how to white face your hockey stick, your field hockey stick, or in other words to turn that into this. So what are we going to need? Some white duct tape, I'll talk to you about that in a second. Cardboard templates, all I've done here is literally take a piece of cardboard, cut it out around the hockey stick head, and I'll show you how I use that in a moment. And this is to me, it's the genius stuff. You know what these are? When you return your Amazon packages and you go to Every and they print out those ready-made labels from the QR code, it's always on a piece of wax paper. I always keep this stuff. I've got a bag load of it over there. It's really, really useful for this kind of thing. Especially when you're trimming tape, because you stick the tape to this and then you can trim it and it stops the tape sticking to your scissors or your knife or whatever. So a couple of bits of that, pair of scissors, Sharpie and some craft knives. What are we going to do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is take a strip of duct tape. Now, not all of these are equal. I've tried various things and to my mind, this is the best one. This is called Duck. It is actually the Duck brand. I'm sure many people are aware of this, but it's not actually called duck tape originally. It's duct tape. It's designed for repairing ducts and, as in tubes, piping. You might not know this, but even on commercial jets, not this kind of stuff, but very, very heavy duty aluminium type tape is used to repair bleed ducts for air and things. So it's actually duct tape, but of course, because people mispronounce it, you get duck brand tape, duct tape. So this is, to my mind, the best. What you're looking for with this is the right combination of some kind of resistance to the ball moving. So when you rub your finger on this, it's not that smooth in the sense that it's slightly grippy. It's a little bit sticky. On these kind of sticks, a lot of them, of course, have that texture surface. Now, if you ever play on a sand-based Astro, this stuff comes off in about 3 seconds flat, and you end up with just a completely shiny, or worse, part shiny, part grippy face. So a lot of these sticks these days that have the textured finish, I always use this tape on them, whether it's white, and of course the reason you have white tape is to disguise the angle of the head relative to the ball, assuming you're playing with a white ball. So especially for drag flickers, that kind of thing, it helps disguise where you're aiming because the ball and the stick blend in together. They camouflage, or the ball is camouflaged against the stick head. Or in fact, the other way around, the stick head is camouflaged against the ball. So the goalkeeper, it's less obvious to them what direction you're sort of trying to aim. That's the point of the white tape. But what it also does is protect this finish without actually losing any sort of grippiness on the stick once the tape is on. So you're looking for the right combination of resistance to the ball, and you can just work that out with various tapes. Get a ball, sort of rub it against the tape, and you'll notice some the ball slides more, others the ball sort of slightly grips. So you're looking for the right combination of that. Also the strength of the tape, because it actually protects your stick from stick hacks, all the other things. And the other thing you're looking for is that the tape can be stuck onto the stick, but it's not so crazy sticky that when you peel it off to replace it, which you will have to do every few games or so, it actually takes this finish off. So of all the ones I've tried, this one I think is the best. It is the Duck brand Ultimate. In white, you can use black if you want. It doesn't have to be to colour disguise, but this is a 50mm, which is perfect for the sticks in terms of the width, by 25 meters. They're about £6.50 a roll on Amazon. 6 rolls. So this big box here, 6 rolls, was about £32 or something. So obviously a bit of a saving, and you will get through this stuff. As I say, depending what kind of pitch you play on. If it's a sandy pitch, it'll really make a difference in terms of protecting your stick, but it'll also get chewed up pretty quickly. If it's a water-based or just a more recent generation Astro pitch, then it'll last a decent while. So let's get into how we do this. Okay, so the first part is personal preference, really. What I'm going to do is pull off a piece of tape that's long enough to go from here all the way down. If you are trying to colour disguise the stick, you'll find that most sticks with a white face, it will be about that length. This particular stick, which has a groove for drag flicking, the groove is also textured. It's textured all the way up to where this pattern stops. So to my mind, it makes sense to have the white all the way up there, but you could put it obviously down here, wherever you like. And if you're not using it to disguise, i.e. just putting black tape on a black stick or something just for protection, obviously you can put it wherever you want. So what I'm going to do is tear off a piece that's from here to about here. But before I do that, what I want to do is make sure I get the end shape correct. So the way I do that, I'm going to take a piece of this and I'm going to stick that tape onto the backing paper like that. Why am I doing that? Well, this template here, the first one, is actually for the curve of the stick here. You don't have to use a template. I just find it neater. You could just put the tape on and then just trim it with a craft knife, but I just find this a bit neater. So what I'm going to do is put this over the tape now, draw the outline, and then cut it straight here, because unfortunately you'll need two pieces. There's no tape that's quite big enough to sort of go straight across. I'm sure if you got maybe a 80mm or wider, you could just do that, then trim around the edges. But the way I do it is using two pieces. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do now is put the template here, and then I'm simply going to get a Sharpie. Make sure you can see that, and then draw a line there. And that's the line I want. Okay, now what I do is I pull this long enough so that it would fit from where I want it to start here to the end of the stick. Yep, so that's about perfect, maybe a tiny bit longer, and then I'm just going to trim that off. Okay, so what I've got now is a piece of tape long enough with the line on it, and I'm just going to cut out around that line. So here we go. As you can see, because I've got the backing paper on, it makes cutting this really, really easy. If you've ever tried cutting tape before without backing paper, the tape often sticks, and it's really, really difficult to get the scissors continually moving to keep cutting, because the tape sticks to the scissors. So that is now going to go on here. Now, to help you get it on accurately and reposition, I take another little piece of wax paper. Make sure you've got the right side going onto the sticky tape. So that's the wax side going against the sticky side of the tape. Now, what that helps you do is reposition it when you need to. So I'm now going to work out where that needs to go, which is about there. A little bit of pressure at one end, a little bit of pressure there, and the tape is now pretty much in place, so I can make the fine adjustments, and you can see it's now lining up really nicely at this end. Okay, so that's all nicely lined up now for me. So what I'm going to do is just put pressure on to get the tape to sit nicely onto the stick. Obviously you might have a few bubbles, but because you've got the wax at both ends, it's easy to lift it up and relocate the tape if you need. The other thing it does, if you're fussed about these things, is it makes it easier to trim that if you want it slightly shorter, or you know, it needs straightening out or whatever. Now this tape will sit nicely over the edge there as well, so that works well. And then what I'm going to do is lift this That will come off nice and easily. And then look, that's perfectly in place there. Roll the edge over. And this end I will trim later. So the next thing to do is get a piece that goes on here. Now, because this was the edge of the tape, that's a perfectly straight line. So you've got two options. You could get another piece going that way, so you know you've got another perfectly straight line, but then you'll need another piece here, or you can just make sure you've got a nice straight line from an end piece of tape, and then do it this way and another bit across the finer bit of the toe here. Up to you really how you do it. I will get that ready by cutting another piece of tape, and this is where I use this template to trim by drawing a line around it. So I'll get a piece of tape for that and I'll show you how that works. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this piece is, here's the template. I know that this edge here forms this edge of the stick. So when I put this on the tape, what I want is this edge here against the tape, which will allow me now to draw the outline, which will look like this. There we go. So I'm now going to trim that. There's the outline on the tape. I'll trim that and I can stick that on. Okay, that's now trimmed. So we can peel that off the backing paper. As always, use a small bit underneath to help you reposition. There we go. And that will sit just there. Yep, that fits quite nicely. And let's take that off. And now that sits in there quite nicely as well. Okay, a little bit here you can trim. What's most important is you've got a nice flush finish. There's no ridge. To be honest, even if there was, it's not really going to affect the hockey ball. It's so small relative to the size of the hockey ball, even if there was a tiny overlap. So that now sits nicely in there. And then all we've got to do is put a little piece on here to finish. So I'll prepare that and show you how that goes on. Okay, there's the last piece of tape. I've put it flush here, so I know it's in the right position. That will stay flush all the way along. Now I just put the template on, line it up to draw the line where I want to cut. The line is going to be there. There we go. Take the template off, take the tape off, I'll trim that, and then you can see everything finally in place once I put that on. Okay, as always, we're going to put a little piece there to help reposition, but now what we have is that last piece to go in place, and that is going to look something like something like that. Okay, so there you have a nice white face hockey stick. You can see I've trimmed this bit here. You can put a bit of white tape down there, do whatever you like. But what that does is not only help you with essentially turning your stick into something that disguises the angle of the head when you're using a white ball, but also gives you the protection, stops that stuff you know, the sort of grippy face of the stick, stops that wearing off. And on a decent pitch, you know, water based or whatever, you'll get a few matches out of this before you have to replace it. As I said, on a sand based one, this part here is going to get really ripped up very quickly. But you know, that obviously would do, you know, super damage to the stick if you didn't have this on. The last thing to say is, does this affect the power? Not to my mind. You can even see from companies like Crown Hockey, they do make abrasive or sort of slightly dampening sort of 3M tape that you can buy. It's reasonably expensive for what it is. I mean, it's, you know, maybe £8 to £10 for a strip about this big, but it's designed to sort of cushion the impact of the ball on the stick on a very stiff stick that's made of, say, 100% carbon, to give you a bit more cushioning, a bit more grip. To me, this does a similar kind of thing, but at the same time, without actually taking away any power by being too thick and absorbing too much. I mean, clearly there's a really fine line between something to soak up the impact of the ball on a stiff stick, but also you want to be able to transfer that energy back to the ball when you strike. To me, this is a really good balance. I'll put a link to the tape I use below, but leave your comments. I hope you found that helpful, and yeah, happy hitting.